For those who don't know me, I'm Buddy David. I'm president of the Jewish Cemetery of the Virginia Peninsula. I would like to note that after the call, we will be sending out a link for questions you might have. So hold your questions during your call. At the heart of our Jewish community is our cemetery, which is 130 years old. In the Jewish tradition and in this Jewish community, taking care of the cemetery is a sacred duty. Cemeteries are among the most sacred spaces in Jewish life. To desecrate this ground is not merely property damage, it is assault on our dead, on our grief, and on our dignity as a community. Those resting here are entrusted to our community. An attack on them is an attack on all of us. For families who have buried loved ones here, this is a deeply personal wound. We carry that pain with us, and we carry it together. When you step into our cemetery, you feel a quiet, sacred atmosphere. You know your ancestors are remembered and respected. And then something like this occurs. For more than 10 decades, a dedicated group of volunteers have undertaken the responsibility of meeting the obligation of maintaining a hallowed space for our departed loved ones. Those everyday volunteers on the ground include Richard Gordon, Kenny Murov, Ed Sarfin, Roy Lazarus, and others, and they cannot be thanked enough. While this has never happened to us before, and while it might turn out to be a prank of a disturbed 11-year-old juvenile, we nonetheless feel violated, and of course, as Jews, we have cause to look around the corner. Perhaps as many as 24 grave sites were disturbed, and we can only name one site as a name with the family we know in the community, and we have contacted that person. The other 23 sites will be posted, and if you know the family, please contact us. For the most part, the damage can be repaired by resetting and re-anchoring the stones back to their original condition. We are in touch with the company and expect this will be accomplished in the next 10 days or so. But we will never forget. We will address the future by considering what we can do to prevent this. Our discussions have run already from lighting the cemetery at night to motion detector cameras. The trustees of the cemetery will tackle this task and will welcome your advice and support. Let me set the agenda which will follow. Our police have tackled the task of finding the perpetrator and increasing their surveillance of and at the cemetery. You will hear from Chief Weidman, God willing, our Chief of Police, whom we thank very much for his efforts and making himself available to speak to us. Eric Maurer, the Executive Director of the J, will share his thoughts and tell you how you may support the cemetery. I cannot thank Eric enough for his leadership and wisdom he has supplied to us in every phase of our effort. From organizing a group of volunteers to take pictures of the damaged stones, interacting with the police, and guiding us through this presentation, a list that does little justice to his impact and guidance. Steve Marks, the outgoing president of our Jewish community, who in his own right had a spectacular and caring term of office, and who has guided us so admirably. You will be comforted as he describes the strength of our community. At this time, I will turn things over to our Chief of Police.
First and foremost, thank you all for allowing the opportunity for the dialogue so we can speak not only to this acute issue, but to how the police department moves forward after this event. And so I unfortunately, I apologize for being late. I had another personnel matter that I had to resolve before coming to the meeting. So I know there was some conversation about us having identified a 10-year-old, 11-year-old young gentleman that was adjacent to the neighborhood, and he's a person of interest. We're trying to collect enough data, information, and evidence to see if we can present that to our Commonwealth as well as our juvenile justice to see if they want to help us in the pursuit of criminal charges for that individual. We did look to see if this matter had any indications, whether it be identified directly to this young person or some elements in his family situation or in his, I guess, larger influence, and to see if it was a hate crime. We also recorded the information for the benefit of our FBI affiliates that investigate hate crimes. At this point, there's nothing to suggest that was his motive. The primary indication at this point, it appears that his family situation and that dynamic of abuse, substance abuse, is the prevalent factor in his choice to go out there and just be mischievous and vandalize and commit a crime. So I do want to give some credit to the detectives that immediately got onto this. They did a great job of going out and canvassing the neighborhood, speaking with the staff at the cemetery as well as the security officer that was working, collecting all those important key points to help us, first and foremost, identify this young person, try to identify any motive or intent for his behavior, and then come up with a plan that in the long term will prevent this from reoccurring in the very near future or any time in the future. So with that, probably you're better served by me responding to any questions you have as it relates to this event or the Hampton Police Division and City of Hampton's response.
Well, I will start with a question. If anybody would like to unmute, they can unmute and ask their question. My question for you, Chief, is can you talk to us a little bit about how the city protects cemeteries, and in particular, like how has the city upped the number of patrols at the cemetery since this incident has taken place?
And what we've done recently, because we have to have a global view, and with that, we've identified all those cemeteries, worship places that are in our city. We've actually developed a map. We've collected data. We've tracked the recent events, activities at those locations. The officers are assigned a specific district, and now they're held accountable for the locations within their district to increase patrols, to do what we call a keep check. So as time is available to go through those locations, look for suspicious behaviors, activities, or people, and then to proactively interact with those and collect data that we take and send to our intelligence unit. And then we have an officer that our task force officer that's assigned to the FBI that deals with terrorism and hate crimes, collects data. We share that data with the FBI and them in kind. And we build a comprehensive intelligence-led database of locations, behaviors, and things to be wary of. For example, should the FBI have not even specific to a unique location in Hampton, but in our general area or region, come up with some awareness, some alerts, some concerns, then we up our responses, our patrols, and our presence in those areas. Even if it comes to the point where we need to reach out to a specifically identified target location, we will establish communication if that should occur and create a dialogue, create a routine response of patrol, increase our intelligence to make sure that, first and foremost, communication is the key, because you all are in those spaces more frequently than we are. And if we tell you there's something to have a heightened level of alert about, we want to give you a point of contact that you can have a conversation with, that we can share information across the table, and then you all see things that might be, somewhat suspicious, and we can respond accordingly. I dare to say, as I hate to use the word isolated incidents, this is unique in that we have not had a record of an event similar to this in several years, as I can recall. The crime analysis unit is using this as the platform to track and see what our 3 and 5 year trends look like. Because what I typically do is when I have events, I do a 3 and 5 year comparison only because it gives me the most data. So I don't miss anything. I can see if there's any patterns or any trends and then make the modifications of resources accordingly.
The chief very generously has offered to answer any questions that anybody on this call has. Please feel free to put it in the group chat or to unmute yourself and ask a question.
How does an 11-year-old overturn a stone?
That's an interesting question, but I figure I have not seen the size of this 11-year-old. And I guess with enough persistence and enough, I guess, anger, I don't think it's impossible. I don't know the size of the stones. But there was some vandalism when we first went out. We assessed, I think, 3 stones. But then after we did a further investigation, last I knew of, the number I think is as high as 14. And I stand to be corrected if you all know otherwise.
I heard 23.
Okay.
So were they just like scratched up, painted over, or?
I don't have that exact information about the type of damage.
I mean, did
know
he
that-
have a sledgehammer? Hit it with a sledgehammer?
No,
I mean,
there was no indication that he had a instrument to do that. From my understanding, it was mainly physical force. Additionally, it's come to my attention that he removed stones from some of the sites and was collecting some of the stones. For what purpose, still to be determined. We did a preliminary interview with the parents and that child. Of course, that wasn't extremely cooperative. So what we're doing is search warrants at the home and on any electronic devices to see if there are other issues, deeper issues, or an ideology that may have been overlooked through interviews.
Chief, if you don't mind, I'll just add a little bit of extra context to your answer. So the Jewish community, we did an audit of the cemetery and we found a total of 24 graves that had been vandalized.
Okay.
The majority, all of those 24 had been knocked over. Some of them had been knocked over and are still in one piece, and others have been knocked over and are in multiple pieces. And as Buddy shared earlier, the cemetery committee is very enthusiastically committed to getting all of those stones restored.
Absolutely.
But that is sort of the extent of it. And I will add that the majority of the stones that were overturned were in the oldest part of the cemetery. Many of them are over 100 years old. And those are likely the smallest of the stones that we have and the easiest stones to knock over, just to get that little bit of extra context. I see Guy has his hand raised. Guy, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Is there a precedent or a route to develop dialogue with this young man and his family in terms of education and the ability to help him understand another perspective?
Probably, and for lack of better terms, I will say right now, our interest and focus is the criminal accountability, because first and foremost, we get a government record of the behavior, the damage, and the event. And with that, if this is just a one-off or an isolated incident, okay, I understand that. But if there's a pattern of behavior that we need to track moving forward, I think utilizing the criminal justice system is the best device for that. Also, by way of that, we can mandate the counseling, the forced attendance in programs that will give him that awareness and education. We can monitor his behavior moving forward. As unfortunate it is, I'm not necessarily such a grand advocate of introducing our young people into the criminal justice system, but sometimes that's the most effective tool. The reason I say that is because you have this young person who historically has been observed in the cemetery, whether it being loitering, trespassing, or now vandalism. He's unsupervised by a parent or guardian. So using them as a resource for that end, I don't see being very effective. And so our initial intent is to identify if a criminal charge applies, use the criminal justice system, not to penalize him to the way where it will, I guess, harm him for the rest of his life, but it gives an opportunity to monitor his behavior into his more mature years, put him into programs that are mandated by the system and the courts, and be able to, again, have the parents held to higher levels of accountability, because obviously they've failed us thus far. But I'm not opposed to giving him that awareness, that cultural education, that cultural awareness, whatever that looks like, through the programs available through the courts. But if we were to just to, have a consensual contact, they could very well refuse that. And I don't think we would have accomplished anything through that method.
Well, seeing no other questions, we're going to move on. Chief, again, thank you so much for your department, all that you guys have done. The speed and the care that your team has brought to this investigation really hasn't gone unnoticed. I think it's quite remarkable that the department was alerted late Thursday night, basically Friday, to this issue, and here we are on Tuesday, and the suspect has already been identified. So, Chief, again, thank you so much for all that you guys do. We are so appreciative as a Jewish community of what law enforcement does, not just for this vandalism, but what you guys do and the sacrifice you make. So please know that you're deeply thanked.
My pleasure. I look forward to opportunities for future engagement, not in crisis, because I think there's a lot to be learned from all of us. I think we build stronger communities, and we're most successful when we have open lines of dialogue. And there's a lot of ignorance, unfortunately, within the community as to, the importance of us having a relationship, having dialogue, and be able to be more responsive to the needs of all members of our community. And so, to your point earlier about educating this young person, I think most things occur by way of ignorance. Misguided, I guess, information, and we can build that bridge. And police department's community engagement is dedicated to that option. So hopefully we'll stay in communications. I talked to Mr. Shapiro, and I used to speak to him when he worked for the city all the time. So it was like really a great thing to have an opportunity to reach out to him and have a conversation, and get us directed to the mission to make sure we can provide the service for you all.
Thank you, Chief.
My pleasure.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Have a great evening.
For those of you I don't know, I know many of you on this call. My name is Eric Maurer with Jewish Peninsula. I want to share that when I first got the word about this vandalism, I reached out here to our president of the cemetery, Buddy David, and told him something very simple. I said, the J is here. Whatever you need, we are going to make sure that it happens. And I meant every word, and I'm very proud of how we have been able to mobilize as a community under the cemetery's direction to meet this really difficult moment united. I'm just as proud of the volunteer leadership that we have at our cemetery. This is incredibly sacred work, and they treat it that way, quietly, consistently, year after year. I've always admired that, but especially through this current crisis, I have seen something really extraordinary, and I really want to single out both Buddy and also Richard Gordon, who's on the call with us today, who have really carried the heaviest load of this restoration and have done it with remarkable grace. I have been really overwhelmed by the phone calls and emails the past few days from people looking to help. I know there's some people on this call who I might not have responded to, reaching to help, but know that you're being heard. We've had just more offers than we've had jobs to do. And that really is a reflection of who we are as a community. I want to thank and single out Brian Diamond, Michael Malkin, Mike Stupar, and Roy Lazarus, who did some quick work on Friday in the cemetery, identifying the graves, and also to Norm Jacobs, who is a local community member who did some incredible genealogy work to trace the descendants of those graves who were impacted, to make sure that we're doing our best foot forward to identify and communicate with those families. As Buddy shared earlier, the cemetery is moving forward. They're not going to let money be an obstacle for the full restoration. And I think we should all be incredibly proud of this resolve and this message. And I would invite you that if you share the love for the cemetery that I know you do, because you're here, I'm asking you that if you could consider donating to the special fund that we've opened up at the J. We're going to be sending it out in an email. We know that the restoration of the graves and the additional infrastructure that the cemetery is going to identify as their needs is going to come with a price tag to it. And in order to ensure that we don't just build back, but we build back stronger, I'm asking everyone to consider asking how you're going to contribute to this important mission. I keep coming back to the same idea when I think about the violation that we had in our cemetery this week. It only takes one person to cause this much pain. one act of hatred in the dark, but look what it summoned. There's so many people who are showing up with their time and their resources and their hearts. This doesn't make the desecration acceptable, but it reveals something true about this community that we don't appreciate enough. We are not just going to restore a cemetery. We're going to restore something in ourselves. When this is done, we will not have simply restored what was lost. We'll have built something that is stronger. And I just want to thank everybody on this call for being part of that. I'm going to turn it over now to Steve Marks, who's the president of the J, for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I'd like to add a few closing thoughts. Buddy, Richard, and all the community trustees, I also want to thank you, not only for the work you've done to address this situation, but for everything you do year-round to care for the cemetery and preserve its sanctity and dignity. It doesn't always get seen, but it matters deeply. And Eric, also thank you again for stepping into this with energy and conviction. In Jewish life, a cemetery is sacred ground. It reflects memory, continuity, and respect for those who came before us. So this isn't just about repairs. It's about preserving something deeply woven into the fabric of our community. What happened at the cemetery, it was painful, it was unsettling, it hit close to home for many of us. But what's happened since, that's what's really stayed with me. As Eric said, the calls, the messages, the offers to help, people reaching out and asking, what can I do? Neighbors, local leaders, and friends from beyond our community stepping forward to stand with us. It really says something important about who we are. Something that was meant to shake us actually has brought our people closer together. We're showing up for each other, and you can feel it. And just to say this clearly, we're not dealing with this just on our own. Through our JCRC, we've already have relationships in place, and those are being put to work. And a prime example is Chief Weidman that you heard from. We appreciate his help and all his department's help in helping to protect here. And that really matters. So we'll fix what's damaged. We'll strengthen how we protect this space, and we'll move forward together. To everyone, thank you for being here tonight and caring enough to show up. Once again, we will send out a follow-up link about donating and a link to entertain additional questions and comments you have. If you're in a position to help this undertaking, we'd really welcome it. So thank you again. Eric or Buddy, any other last words?
I would add my thanks for all of you who attended and all of you who are supportive and interested. Rest assured that that the trustees will respond, and we respond in the big hands that hold us of this community. It is indeed special, and it's been noted a number of times. And as a lifelong resident of the community, I'm particularly a product of this community. So I thank you all.